everybody. I'm sorry about my voice. I have a bit of a cold and I just woke up. It's about 5. I have to be out of my house at 5:45 and to be at the office for 6:45 because I have a meeting at that time. This is my first attempt at a discussion video and I almost decided to not make it because there's just always something scary about firsts. You're terrified that you would mess up. You're terrified that you will do badly. You're terrified that you will not make an iota of sense. But I have learned to, or rather, I am learning to live with my mistakes. And that goes for everything in life, including making book discussion videos. Especially when it's a topic like Booktube Consumerism, which is dear to my heart for several reasons. The first being that I think it picked up traction around the time when I joined Booktube. And when I say traction, I don't mean that the conversation had not been happening. I just mean that it came onto my radar just as I was about starting my YouTube channel. First time I really heard about it was through Read with Cindy's channel. I watched the video and I could relate with it. Not in the I only own 4 books like she does type of relatable, because I definitely own way more than 4 books. But in the our circumstances tend to determine the choices and decisions we take with regards our material possession type of way. Then I watched my owner's video and I also related with the sense of peace and sureness and joy she gets with from books. And then I watched Cam's video and then I watched Damien's video, which, sorry, like I said, I have a cold. And then I watched Damien's video, which I connected with the most, because you see, like him and Cindy, my home life was kind of not easy growing up, but like him, I went the opposite direction in wanting to own things that are mine compared to Cindy's more minimalist approach, which full disclaimer, I am in full support of anybody and everybody doing exactly what they want. It's our life, it's our choices. So if you want to own a lot of books, go for it. If you do not want to own a lot of books, go for it. If you rather go to the library and all of that, please do so. I guess it's just, I wanted to bring my own perspective and my own 2 cents to the issue, because I guess it's interesting when these conversations happen, because it comes from the perspective of people who mostly live in the UK, the US, or Canada. And I guess sometimes we forget that our perspective and our life experiences are kind of different when you're from another part of the world and you happen to love books. So, to give a quick, I hope it's quick, history lesson of where I'm coming from, and let me just say it, I am team I like to own books. Just a heads up. So I grew up in Ibadan, Nigeria. My parents were not married, but they were living together, which I know sounds like no big deal, but trust me, in Nigeria, especially at the time when I was born, it was kind of like a big deal. Like, you got married before you lived together, and you definitely got married before you had a kid. But my mother was in love with him, and my dad was too responsible to settle down. And the responsible also spilled over into his financial decisions, because my father had a thing for living in debt. He had a thing for living above his means, and he had a thing for borrowing money to sustain that lifestyle. He also had a thing for every single time he borrowed the money, he would take off, travel to another country, another state, another city. I will not see him for weeks, which would mean that by the time the people he borrowed money from come over to come and collect, it's usually my mother that they meet. And so for the first couple of time, they try to reason and all of that, and when they see that, okay, my dad still isn't showing up, they take the next possible action, which is they would toss my mother in jail, with the hope that by the time he eventually gets to him, that the woman he's living with and the mother of his child is in jail, it will show up with the money so that he can bail her out. Unfortunately, they didn't really know my dad so well, because that never happened. So what will happen is that our parents and her siblings will come, gather money, and pay off the debtors so that they can bail her out of jail. So in a way, they were helping, or rather in a way, they were intervening or trying to solve my father's problem, because my mother was collateral damage. This happened back and forth, because you would think she would have left him, but no, she still loved him. And there was this back and forth, and this happened regularly until eventually she decided she'd had enough and then left. But unfortunately, she did not live with me, because I'm Nigerian, and to be precise, I'm Ishan, and the Ishans value their children. They value their daughters as much as they do their sons. So she could not just take me when she was leaving. And she left me with a father who, 2 days after she left, also took off to God knows where. And for the next, I'm only giving this history lesson so you understand where I'm coming from, because for the next year, for the next 6 months to a year, please note that at this point in time I was about 6, 7. For the next 6 months to 1 year, I was shuffled from relative to relative. I stayed with different uncles, I stayed with different aunts, I stayed with family friends. They just moved me from one person to another, and for a very long time, nothing was secure. The only thing that I had that was mine were the clothes I had on, and the bag I put my clothes in, because I knew it that no matter how long I stayed with someone, give it a couple of weeks, max a month or two, they will move me to somewhere else. And I was right. Eventually my mother came back, and after she had to go from relative to relative to find me, and she finally did find me in the house of a family friend, she took me with her, and we moved into our parents' house. Now, our parents lived in a 2-bedroom apartment, which sounds like a very good thing, but my grandmother had 9 kids. Of the 9 kids, 7 were living with her. Of the 7 that were living with her, 3 of them had their own kids. So we were 10 people living with my grandparents in a 2-bedroom apartment. And because culture dictates that the older people, the parents, they stay in a bit of luxury. Not luxury, but they definitely got the master's bedroom. So you had 10 people trying to make one room work. The children, of course, slept on the floors, because the adults definitely got the bed. I know, great parenting skills. My clothes at that point in time had always been hand-me-downs. My toys were hand-me-downs. So growing up, book was not in the equation for me. I didn't see them, I didn't own them, I didn't read them. Because when you grow up the way I did, book is a luxury you cannot afford, even second-hand books. And then my mom married my stepdad. He was more middle class. Think of it as more upper middle class. And then we moved. For the very first time, I lived in a house that was big. For the very first time, I had a room all to myself. And once again, my world shifted. And I was still certain that we should just give it a couple of days, max weeks, max months, and it will, just like every other person had done up to that point, will kick me out. He noticed, because I kept my bag of things like by the door. He bought me clothes and stuff, but the clothes I came with, I kept in a bag by the door just in case, so that it would make living easier should I need to be kicked out. And I guess he noticed because it was sensitive like that. I say was because he's dead now. But it was sensitive like that, and he wanted to connect with this 7, almost 8-year-old daughter of his wife. So he got me a gift, and I can never forget it. It was this box set collection of fairy tales, 5 books in a tiny green box that had a little strap. You could carry it about as a bag. And I remember him giving it to me and saying, "Here, this is yours. No matter what happens, this is yours." And I took it, and everything shifted again and settled into place. Because that has always been my relationship with books. When I buy them, when I hold them, when I read them, everything settles. Everything it fits. Once again, I reclaim that joy of an 8-year-old child who finds herself finally at home. Because they've always been my portal out of a shitty circumstance or situation. Like, even when I'm no longer in a shitty situation, when I read them, I'm still transported back to that feeling of safety, of being seen, of being loved. So yes, books are an integral part of my life. I love them. They've also always been my constant companion because I was and still am an only child. I grew up an only child. And when it is that you grow up in those situations, in a situation like that, books are your best friend. They're your siblings, they're your friends. They hold your secrets, they hold your emotions, they hold your secrets, they hold your emotions, they hold your fears, they hold your joy. They are what you hold when you're celebrating. They are what you hold when you're heartbroken and sad and feel like the world is crumbling around you. Books have always been there. They see me. They love me. They know me. They accept me. And my stepfather noticed my love for books. And so he used the opportunity to teach me a life lesson. Because I remember I was 11, about to enter secondary school, and I asked him because I wanted to buy more books. Because prior to that point, I didn't really buy as much books. I was going to a school where everybody loved books, and it was a thing because we read a lot of Enid Blytons, and my classmates had them a lot, so I could borrow. I borrowed, I read it, I learned how to read fast. I had to read it in school before the end of school, and then I had to give it to them so that they could take it back home. So I was about to turn 11, and I just turned 11. I was about to enter secondary school, and then I asked my dad for books, and then he said, "I cannot always buy you books, but you can always get books if you want it, because good things come to those who wait. So if you have money, you save it, you put it aside. because you know you want to get something you love and you enjoy doing. And then when you've had enough money, you when you've had enough money, you take your money to a bookshop and you buy as much as that money can buy for you, which I felt was interesting, but I was down for it. So I said, okay, I will do that. So it got me a colon. Think of a colon like your piggy bank, except for the fact that this is wooden, not plastic. And sometimes you can break it after you're done saving to get all the money out, but I didn't break mine because this was meant to be a constant habit for me. So breaking it would mean I have to be buying a new colon every couple of months. So what I did was that because it's a wooden box and there's this fitted slot at the top where you put in your money, and then you get I used a knife, and then I would put in a knife through the slot on top and wiggle it around to pull out the notes one at a time. It was a tedious job, but I loved doing it because it meant that I was about to get books. I would put up a picture of a colon somewhere over here so you'd have an idea of what it looks like, right? Just somewhere here. So I got 20 naira as my pocket money every day. And so 20 naira every day, which would mean that it was 100 naira every week, 400 naira at the end of every month. I had 1,200 at the end of every term. If you add the 10 naira here, the 20 naira here, the 15 naira here I got from when relatives visited and everything, and I usually had about 1,400 to 1,500 naira at the end of a term. And so I took that 1,500 and I went to Booksellers, which was this new bookshop where it was far from my house. It was about a 40 to 45 minutes drive, but it had practically every book I wanted to buy. And Enid-Blyton's in that bookshop, in Booksellers, was 475 naira for a book, and they had every single Enid-Blyton I ever wanted to get. So the Enchanted Wood, The Children of Willow Tree Farm, your Mallory Towers, your St. Clair's. If it was an Enid-Blyton book, Secret 7, Famous 5, if it was an Enid-Blyton book, it was going to be there. So I slowly started buying my way through every single Enid-Blyton they had. 475, I usually could buy 3 to 4 books at the end of every term. I would buy them, I would read them religiously over and over and over and over again until the new term ended. I had more money and then I would buy more books, and that was how it was. Because from that age, I learned the joy of putting aside money that I worked for, or rather that I saved for. I saved hard for, because my friends would be licking lolly, which is this ice cream thing that turns your tongue yellow or pink, depending on what flavor you got. They would buy the lolly and they would buy meat pies. And I wouldn't do any of that because I was just okay, I would save so I could buy books. I had breakfast in the morning, so I was covered on that. And I knew that lunch was waiting for me when I got home at about, say, 4. So from about 7:30 when I ate to about 4, I did not eat anything. I just kept all of that away and I just saved. So from that age, I learned that I can put aside money, it would accumulate, and then when I'm ready, I could splurge on books. And when I did, I was back to feeling that indescribable joy and peace and feeling safe and feeling seen. And I guess joining Booktube and seeing the conversation, that's what has always confused me and surprised me. This whole castigation of people that like to buy books. Why can't we just live and let live? Some people buy books because it makes them happy, and there is nothing wrong with that. Because there are so many other things they could be using their money for that would hurt somebody. Like, buying books does not actually hurt another person. They are not buying drugs. They're not buying drugs, they're not killing to make the money, they're not killing for the money, they're just buying this little pocket of magic that makes them happy. And there is nothing wrong with that. And I know the case has been made for, going to the libraries and stuff, but not everybody has access to libraries. Not everybody. Libraries in Nigeria definitely do not carry YA fantasy. You're not going to see a Neil Gaiman or a Stephen King novel in a library over here. You're going to get your classics, sure, and that is where I discovered and found my love for classics. But fantasy and thrillers and horrors, you're not going to get it in our libraries. If you want those books, you're going to have to buy them. And I'm also all for buying your books used if you can get them used. Because, yes, my very first Neil Gaiman book ever was Stardust. And I bought it used. And then I read it. And then I was like, do you know what? I want every single Neil Gaiman book ever. And then I started reading my way through his books and his comics. And my life has been all the better for it. But see, used bookstores over here are good for standalone novels. Because there's no coherent organization to how it works. You will not find the entire Darker Shade of Magic series in a used bookstore. If you're lucky, you might find one of the books. Or you might find book 2 and still be missing book 1 and 3. Or you might find book 3 and have no idea where book 1 and 2 is. But you're not going to get entire trilogies or duologies at a used bookstore here. No. If you want a complete series, you have to buy it. You have to buy it. And which still goes back to my point. Some people love used books. They love holding the dreams and joys and emotions and thoughts of someone else in their hands. And some people love new books, love to imbue their own personalities and passion, their own little bit of magic. They love to spill a bit of their secret and bleed a little onto their books so that it contains parts of them and keeps forever. And there is nothing wrong with either. There is nothing wrong with buying your books used, if you can, or getting them from the libraries. And there is nothing wrong if that is what brings you joy, buying your books new. And I'm certain a lot of the people that buy their books new on Booktube probably buy it from book outlets, because it's cheaper. And you all are lucky. Book outlet does not ship to Nigeria. And even worse, they don't even collect my money. Because I had a friend that was coming into the country in December. And I wanted to buy, a lot of books from book outlets for Christmas. And send to her so she can bring it for me when she's coming. And they won't even accept my card. They won't even accept my debit card. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is that the Yorubas have a saying that they say, Ika o dogba, which means all fingers are not created equal. Your fingers are not created equal. They are varying sizes and widths and lengths. And it's representative of the fact that we are all different. Everybody's circumstances are different. Everybody's history is different. Everybody's financial situation is different. So shouldn't that also mean that everybody's reasons for buying books, for owning books, are different? Some people, what brings them joy is to walk into their homes and see floor-to-ceiling shelves, to enter a little bit of wonderland and just marvel at all the books that surrounds them. That is their cocoon. That is their safe space. And that should be okay. And some people love going to the libraries. They love walking through the shelves and finding new books to love. They love going to thrift stores and going to charity shops and picking up great deals and bargains. That is what brings them joy. There is nothing wrong with that either. Like, why can't we all just do what makes us happy? Like, seriously. Buying books makes the writers happy because it puts money directly in their pockets and they keep writing. It makes the publishers happy because they realize that, okay, this is something that pays, that is financially viable. And then they publish more books. It makes those working in publishing houses happy because then they get paid. It makes the reader happy because they can lose themselves in a world. Buying the books used might not necessarily put money in the pockets of the writers and the publishers, but it gives you the opportunity to discover a new author that you can rave about. And who knows, maybe from talking about it and sharing the good news, you encourage someone who can buy books to buy the books and put money in the author's pocket. And eventually, should your financial situations change, should your financial situations change, or when they do change, then you can start buying books. Like, either way, people are happy. Like, there is nothing wrong in people being happy. 2018 has been quite the year. Like, "2018 has been a clusterfuck of a year all over the world. So if things are like that, should we really fault people for finding joy in whatever way they can, as long as it's not hurting somebody else? Can you really fault them for trying to find a little bit of happiness in something as innocent and beautiful as books? Especially when you consider that people work hard for their money. I work 10 to 12 hours days, sometimes 6, sometimes 7 days a week for my money. And after I've sorted out my mother's bills and I've sorted out my bills, is there really anything wrong in putting a bit of my money in books and then watching it pile so that I can ship it all in bulk? Because it's cheaper to ship in bulk than it is to buy it individually, especially in my part of the world. I guess my point is that I find it very unfair to make people feel guilty for buying something that causes no other person any harm and brings them joy, just because of the belief that anybody has a right to police a grown adult's decision, especially a grown adult that does not work for you, a grown adult that does not make her money or his money or their money for you, a grown adult to whom you are not their parents, a grown adult to whom you are not their lover, a grown adult to whom you don't even really know. In a world that seeks to police our decisions daily with puritanical laws and governments that do not give a shit about us, ultimately do not give a shit about us, what gives you the right? What gives you the right to not make anybody just be? What gives you the right to refuse to let us all live and let live.